It's very private, it's very secret. I'm showing up every day. I'm learning information. I'm repeating, I'm reciting, I'm regurgitating. I'm being deprived. I'm being mentally, humiliated. I'm being physically humiliated, all these things. And at the end of said thing, like I said, I'm brought into a dark room with candles lit, with a shield before me at an altar. I got down on all my knees. I'm blindfolded and I recited said oath. Anybody in their right mind is going to say, son, you just joined a cult. Remove all the elitism, all the prestige, all the honor. And if you see it for what it is, I think you can mentally process that this is crazy.
Thor, thank you so much for saying yes to God and agreeing to share your very, very powerful testimony. But before we actually get into the video, we got merch for sale. We got merch for sale. Yeah. So click the link in the description box and you'll see we got everything you need to boldly profess Jesus. And so my first question to you is, tell me how you were introduced to Greek life.
Absolutely. So it's always been around. There's always been like an undertone of Greek life in my life from a very early age. My mom is a two-time charter member for Delta Sigma Theta. She chartered at Clemson University and then went on to charter the Gwinnett Alumni Chapter in Metro Atlanta. My father was a Freemason. My uncle is a Freemason and a Sigma. My first cousins are Greek as well, both MPHC and band fraternities. And then I ended up pledging my little brother as well. And then in going to private Christian school growing up that was predominantly Black, of course, there's always that influence with teachers and things of that nature. There's always kind of that environment that's fostered. So I've always been around it.
So what college did you end up going to?
I ended up going to Clemson University as well.
Oh, did
Yeah.
you? Okay.
So my mother went, I went, my brother went, and my sister went.
So
Yeah.
what year did you get to school there?
I got to school in 2011. Going in 2011 is really when I kind of had an understanding of who my mother was as a charter member, but I didn't think it was as, I mean, she's royalty there. I mean, truly. Of those who chartered, her name was the one that always kept coming up on campus, So when they heard that I was her son, like even when I came to campus and did a lot of freshman orientation type things, I'm like, oh, my mom is X, Y, and Z. Like, oh, that's your mother. Like, well, come on, we'll give you all the rides to the parties. We'll take you here. We'll help you get settled in. All the things. So that's when I was like, oh wow. So that there was a little bit more of a draw, I would say, when I came to campus and really saw like the quote unquote majesty that she had there. Especially with Clemson being a PWI and the population, the Black population being only 6%. Needless to say, the Greek culture there really was the central space for Blacks to be able to come together.
That's so interesting because I went to a PWI as well, and it's like the Greeks are like the who's who of the Black community. It's like if you're in the community, you want to go up the ranks into being in a Greek organization.
Absolutely. A rite of passage.
So how did you decide with Omega? Was that something you like automatically always wanted to be, or was it when you came into Clemson, you was kind of surveying the scene and decided to go with that fraternity?
I say it was probably more the latter. Coming into college, I was kind of looking at the other side of 1911. I think that's something that
got it.
Outside, And so I think that, coming in, that's just the assumption that I had. That's what people always, I guess, kind of pushed on you throughout high school. Like, oh, you kind of fit this mold or fit this bill. And so that's just kind of what I naturally, organically thought that was going to happen for myself. I think once I got there, Clemson, I'm not sure how it works for other universities, but they have MPHC convocation, which is where all the organizations come together and they do their presentations and kind of speak on, who they are, what they do, what they're about. Like I said, coming in, that was my trajectory. At least that's what I felt. And then I went to convocation and that's when things kind of changed for me. So once the organizations got up there to present, the Kappas really, I guess, were a little more, they were a little less together. In the way in which they presented themselves. They were constantly kind of looking back at their slides and we're kind of fumbling through things. And I guess kind of that allure, that aura or whatever you want to call it that was there kind of started to leave a little bit, And at that particular time, there was only 2 Omegas on the yard. The chapter was largely inactive at that time, but there were 2 on the yard. Only one person from the organization got up to represent the organization, and he goes up and he just, for lack of better words, he kills it. He gets up there. I mean, he didn't look back at the slide one time. It was just any questions. And I was just so impressed by the presence that the man had in the room and that he commanded the room by himself. And I think that, not to take away from other organizations' principles or anything like that, but I think that the principles of Omega spoke to me a little bit more deeply. I do believe and value friendship and relationship and things of that nature. And I thought that the cardinal principles really spoke to me. So I tried not to be that person that let the stereotypes of an organization be the reason in which I decided to pursue. And so once I really did my surface level research, right? Because I think that's all you can really do outside of an organization. That's when I ultimately decided, I think Omega is going to be the path for me. And then that's when I ended up trying to ultimately pursue that.
So what did you do once you decided, okay, I want to go Omega?
So then that kind of put me on the path to kind of try to figure out, like, what does this look like for myself in terms of figuring out how I communicate with the bros. Because like I said, they were in a space where they were inactive on campus. I'm not sure if it was moratorium or exactly what it was, but there wasn't a lot of events going on. I forget exactly how it happened, but at that time I was able to communicate with somebody at the district level. Moving on from there, I was actually put in contact with a brother who eventually became my dean of pledges. So we communicated a few times via text, and eventually we got the opportunity to meet. He asked me to meet him at what we call Tillman Hall or Old Main, which we call it. And so I met him at Old Main for an event, and it wasn't very discreet at all. He was sitting on the side of an auditorium all by himself. It was like, hey, meet me at Old Main at said time. So I come in there and I sit next to him. Very brief conversation. He's like, "You really want to do this?" Yeah. I think. Unless you don't want me to do it, I don't know. But I feel pretty good about it. And so, we had a brief conversation. From there, I proceeded to leave, and then that's when I kind of got thrown into, I guess, that pre-pledge kind of space.
So how was that? Did your mom prep you at all, or your family prep you on like pledging or showing your interest, how you might be treated, any of that?
Not at all. Not at all. I think we kind of get the general idea from popular Black culture with films like, the drum lines, the stomp the yards, the school days. And so I had my own preconceived notions. And I think too that there's just this part of you. I can't necessarily speak to women, but I think for men that you want to go through certain ordeals. You want to go through the fullness of whatever that experience may be. And being made and all of that. So there was really no preparation. There was really no conversation like that. I did at least tell my mom what my aspirations were, and she was excited about said aspirations because a lot of my former chapter brothers, she was very close to, still is. She was very happy about that. Like, oh, wait, I can get you in contact with this person. I'm like, hey, from what I understand, you don't need to get me in contact with nobody. You just stay over there. I don't want it to be like they already know you. I don't want to necessarily put myself in a space where like that's my mom, and because that did come back to bite me at a point in time. Like, oh, this is your mother. You're not special. And we're gonna let you know just how not special you are. So from there, I was kind of put in contact with some other young men that were also aspiring. And I guess we just kind of loosely formed our little pre-pledge group.
Before we continue with the video, I have a quick question for you. Has God called you to YouTube? If so, I'm offering a YouTube e-course. So I've been in the YouTube space for about 4 years and I have over 5 million views. But when I first got into this space, I didn't know what I was doing. I was in this thing yet holding, and I don't want that for you. So I decided to put all of the knowledge and wisdom into this YouTube e-course. And so if you want the keys to a successful YouTube channel, click the link in the description box. Now back to the video.
Nothing popped off in 13. So it ended up being a very long pre-pledge process. It was about a year. And I'd say it kind of started around spring 13. And it was just the usual, what you've heard 1,000 times before. It's cleaning chicken, it's cleaning up after tailgates, it's pickups, it's drop-offs, it's do you need something cleaned out? Do you need your clothes ironed? Things of that nature. And I think it's just, largely how invested are you? And then the constant threats of, yeah, you're not going to make it. You're not going to be on. You're not discreet. You came over here this time, just the mind games, and constantly trying to reassure yourself. And so there was a lot of that. But inevitably, it did end up leading to line in spring 2014.
How was the formal, like, okay, they have Rush. How was that? I actually never heard like anybody talk about that process of Omega.
And I can't speak for other organizations, but in terms of who shows up, the interest meeting, at least from our former chapter, you pretty much know who's going to show up to the interest meeting, because outside of those who went through the pre-pledge process, nobody else is really expected to be there. As a matter of fact, I think it was kind of intentional, right? In terms of like posting flyers, like they were in very discreet locations where the general population probably wasn't going to see them. It was just kind of like, flyers drop in a day, show up to the meeting, do the formal thing. But it wasn't necessarily something that was very public for everybody to necessarily be able to see, because you had already formed your core group, right? So it's like the 3, 4, 5 gentlemen that you've been in rank with for the last year, 6 months, whatever the case may be. You have earn a right to be here at this interest meeting. Anybody else we don't even necessarily want to deal with. And I think, of course, that's intentional in the sense that when certain people that are ideal candidates on paper are brought before, district representatives and things of that nature, you can't just be like, oh yeah, we don't want them. Because on paper they have all the credentials to move forward. So I think it is very, like I said, intentional the way in which they set this up.
And you just think about how anti-Christ that is.
Yeah.
You got this formal process that's set in place, but yet they behind the scenes they doing their own thing.
Of course. But I mean, I think that is also what, at that time, in that frame of mind, that's what you crave. And in a sense, that elitism has already been formed, right? Because I can remember, people that were trying to come to said interest meeting, and I'm already in that frame of mind of, you can't sit with us. You know what I'm saying? You weren't in the trenches with us. You wasn't cleaning no chicken. You wasn't doing no pickups, drop offs. You don't deserve a spot, right? So I think that had already that seed had already been planted.
So how was that process for going through that, the underground?
Man, it was everything that they said it would be. But again, I think that there is a certain adoration that through pop culture, through your community, et cetera, that you kind of crave and idolize that experience, because you want to feel like you earned something, that you matriculated through a process and you got your rite of passage. You want that. So it's everything that they say it is, everything that has been said in previous conversations as it pertains to, wood and necks and passing the egg and the omega apple. It's all those things, but I was one of those that beautified that experience. And I think I wanted more because I was doing something that a lot of people doubted, right? I'm a small guy, never been a big guy in my life, right? And so to be like the non-stereotypical omega, to be the smaller, and I was even smaller in college, I'm talking like 145 soaking wet, maybe, and to be the tail of the line, and to be light skinned and be the bruz, which hasn't always been popular. I think it was just there was a lot of doubt, so I wanted to go that much harder. I wanted to make sure that I was made. And so I tried to go as hard as everybody else. I remember having a conversation, or me and my former line brothers having a conversation with one of our notorious pro fights after a tailgate. And his words kind of stuck with me. He was like, Omega's like a house. And when you come into said house, and he's referring to the pledge process at this time, but he's like, when you come into this house, the best thing for you to do is to lock the door behind you. And then all you can do at that point is get through the house. So he's like, just kind of keep that with you. Don't be that person that comes in and keeps that door open, because you might be that person that tries to sneak back out. Come in, stand your ground, lock the door, throw away the key, get through that house. And so that's kind of what I kept with me. Like, no matter what horror I saw inside of this house, there was nothing that was going to keep me not getting through this process. Because why them and not me? If I can do it 140 pounds soaking wet, then that will say to me and to them that, this brother is, for lack of better words, worthy.
That may have sound very, encouraging at the moment, but when you on the other side and you think about that, he basically telling you, do whatever you need to do.
Correct.
To cross into this organization.
And we would, right? We did. I mean, you're preconditioned, I think, to do that. And I mean, why not? Because you think of all these pleasures, for lack of a better word, that you're going to have on the other side. And that's something that I like to say to people now. Like, let's not be hypocritical here and say that we are coming into these organizations for anybody but ourselves. Greek life is going to serve you long before it ever serves the community. If you were really about service to the Black community and things of that nature, why not the NAACP? Why not just Black Student Union? There is something specific about the esteem, the elitism, the clout that comes from these organizations that people aspire to. And I think that in their essence, the attractants are a lot stronger now. I think that in the beginning, in their inception of these organizations, there probably was more purity, not a righteous purity, but a purity in the sense that these were truly Black secret societies. And the people that joined them without all the glitz and glamour. It wasn't about boots or calls or hand signs. Like, this truly was a Black secret society, without all the accoutrements or whatever you want to call it. So again, I think you come into it not even with the community in mind, not with, the betterment of other individuals in mind. It is very self-centered. You are seeking self-promotion, if anything. And I think that's something that I always speak to. Like, you don't go through what we went through to help somebody else. I've never known anybody to take the lashes that we took to help somebody else and go through the things that we go through. This is to benefit you. There is something on the other side that you want to gain access to, that you have to go through this process in order to have. But if we were being true, if we were being honest, it's for us. And so I think that subtly, this person that was very selfless coming into this process, by the time I got on, had already kind of switched in my mindset to kind of be more self-centered, to be more self-promoting, to be more elitist, and things of that nature.
So how was it with enduring it with your other line brothers, your former line brothers?
I say it to this day. I said it then. I say it now. Omega was really the only unifier. We were starkly different individuals, morally, socially, etc. There was nothing. I mean, I was at that time, quote unquote, very Christian. I think a lot of us are very Christian in the sense that we're very churchy. I don't necessarily think that we're fully surrendered or submitted to the person of Messiah, but I think that we are churchy. And so, I mean, coming into it, my preliminary line name was Choir Boy. That's what they called me. Like, okay, that's Choir Boy. That this makes sense. And so I think that there was a lot of clash initially, but we also had a common goal. And so I think that in our minds, again, that's something else that we internalized, right? As if it was noble. We were able to put aside personal differences for the sake of this common goal. That is the testament of Omega, even, right? To be this greatest group of thinking Negroes, to be able to put aside said differences for the betterment of the Black man and community. So I think that we're like, yeah, guys, we really get it, because look at us, right? Like, we're very different in every capacity, but we have formed a bond steeped in trauma, and that kept us tied, that kept us unified. Outside of Omega, I think we're all very honest with each other that we probably never would have been friends, and I think that that's why those friendships, obviously don't exist today. But at that time, that trauma, that common experience, bonded us. I think that's something that organizationally they know. I think that's something that the enemy knows. Any relationship rooted in trauma is stronger and longer lasting. I mean, I love to say that people really remember the ex that was great to them, but no, the one that they have the longest history, it typically is the one they had the most trauma with.
What about the above ground process?
Above ground process, I think, ultimately it's a formality. They know what's going on. Nobody's ignorant. I think, they'll throw the rock and hide the hand, but ultimately everybody's in cahoots. It's collusion. That there is no, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's going on. I think largely we see that. We see that even in cases like what happened to, our beloved brother Caleb Wilson, and how everything happened with him. I think at the end of the day, fraternity is going to protect fraternity, but you're not going to matriculate through not having had the same shared experience as these other gentlemen, right? Because I think that there are checks and balances within the fraternity. You hear it all the time. Like, you're a Kappa, but you're not a Nu. You're an Alpha, but you're not an A. You're an Omega, but you're not the Bros. You're not the Qs, for real. So with that in mind, it was kind of even shocking to me at the culmination process when we were crossing formally, nationally. I probably got the worst neck of my life formally crossing over. Like, we're going through the end of our ritual where we go through a series of tests. And I'm like, okay, well, obviously this is going to be the watered down version of said test. No. No, I'm getting hit by men in suits. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's like that. So I'd say paperwork wise, very easy. I think it's a formality. We come in, we sing the song, we learn Invictus, we play ignorant. You go and you play stupid like you've never done this before, when you know that this is a nightly thing, and everybody goes home happy.
So how was it when you finally crossed over? So being online for two months and you finally got what you wanted. How was it being, the Bros at Clemson for you?
I think that's the thing. I think you think you're going to get what you want, but you don't necessarily know what you're going to get. I think that you have no idea what you're signing up for. I think the truth of fraternity is exposed once you do come to the other side. I think what the world ultimately sees, whether that's step shows, service, etc., is 5% of the organization. There's so much that happens behind closed doors that when I came into it, I was like, whoa, it's almost overwhelming, right? Because you think you see somebody in a shirt, y'all are just automatically friends. And at least Omega wise, that's not the case. You know what I'm saying? We got to talk about it. We got to have some serious conversations. And there was a certain level of beauty that I used to see in that. Like, you just want to make sure that this man is not just a member, but truly immersed in the organization, that he understands the tenets, the principles, that he can defend the shirt that he's wearing. Even with that, right? It's just, there's just a certain level of brainwash that happens. So I think coming into it was kind of a culture shock for a while. You know, like, I'm thinking this is just, it's just going to be brotherly love. And it's very much so not that. It's, you got to get good. You got to put people through. And so I prided myself on being a knowledgeable bro, you know, and knowing all the little riddles and secrets and passcodes and being able to talk about said things. And let's break down your shirt. Let's talk about it. All these things that ultimately have no real bearing on the world or advancement. But, you know, it was different. It was different. I think socially it was amazing. Truly. I think that we were able to, I came into it in my mind with the right attitude, the right motives. I really did want to serve. I really did want to help, you know, and I'm thinking that God is endorsing said thing. I remember right before I did go online, I was in an internship. We had dinner during this internship at this restaurant, and this guy came in. You know, they said he was a pastor, and he bought everybody in my section. He bought everybody's dinner. Something in me said, that seems like something an Omega man would do, right? And so it's cold, and he's getting ready to leave, and boom, pulls a Scully out of his jacket and put it on Omega Sci-Fi, right? So I was just like, wow, in my mind, confirmation. You know, this is what Omega men do. You know, they're men of esteem, they're men of church, they're men of family, et cetera, et cetera. And so for me, I'm just happy to continue in that legacy of what I think are incredible black men. And I think that, again, that is why they grab certain people, and because they want you to gravitate, they want you to aspire and feel like you're in some level of kinship with, you know, Steve Harvey's, the Ricky Smileys, the Tom Joyners, these brothers, Charles Drew, all these particular people that have gone on to do great things in the world and in their communities. And so I was very proud of that. You know, and the fact that, you know, I can represent my 6% at Clemson on this particular platform, shoulder to shoulder with other men of history who led in the civil rights movement, who led in these particular movements and that particular movements, who did so much on Clemson University's campus itself. You know, my chapter was the first, my former chapter was the first Black Realtor organization at Clemson. And so, you know, I took pride in all these things. And so, you know, I founded study halls, one called Books and Boots, and all these other little things that I wanted to do to try to leave my legacy, especially coming after my mom, right, and all that she had done. So I think socially, amazing. You know, I was able to make friendships. Bros are well traveled. So I think that I was able to, you know, make a lot of friends at University of South Carolina, our sister chapter, former sister chapter at UGA, and just, you know, meeting people. And even my last semester in college, I had to transfer to Georgia State. And just off the strength of me being the brush, you know, so much love was shown. You know, like, if you need a place to chill between classes, we got a chapter room, you know. So I think on a social level, the fraternity did what it was supposed to do. And I think I want to emphasize that as well, because I get that question all the time. Like, why would you leave? You seem so blessed. The fraternity has clearly blessed you. I think the fruits of the fraternity are what they were designed to be. Something can be profane, unrighteous, and still yield a fruit. Whether I am doing something in covenant, even if that's grown people things with your spouse, or grown people things with people that are not your spouse. The culmination of said experience is the same, but one is holy, one is unholy and profane, right? So I think that, yes, it is designed to help you in the marketplace. It is designed to help you socially. It is designed to help you when you move to a new city, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm blessed. I am reaping the benefits of what I signed up to do. I did a service, I did an act, I submitted myself to certain things. And so now I'm reaching the tangible benefits of said thing. Has nothing to do, doesn't mean God's hand is on it at all. Just because they say it's Christian, what does that mean? You know what I'm saying? Putting Christ on something doesn't mean that Christ is in something. And that's something that I think I really had to learn, you know, throughout my time. But again, socially, it was great. Spiritually, though, a lot of things started to happen. You know, I think that there was just, I was working in my church, Freeway Church, shout out to Freeway Church of Clemson. I was working there doing sound for, you know, my first couple of years there. I don't even know when I transitioned out of the church. I think it just happened. Right. And I didn't even notice, you know, it's just like I'm going, I'm there. And then all of a sudden I'm not anymore, you know, or certain things that I had already worked out of my life were returning without me really realizing it. Lust obviously is a thing. Pride is a thing. Self-centeredness, elitism, all these fruits that are not fruits of the spirit in any capacity. But these things are happening. So again, the world is becoming amazing in a certain extent. I feel accepted. I feel like I have brothers. I feel like I have friends, connections. But on the spiritual side of things, not even necessarily paying attention to how it's damaging me or relationships at the time, that I'm in, and how it's hurting my relationship. Like the man that you thought I was, now I just need you to be wifey to the president of the chapter. I need you to, I'm thinking it's going to be like school days. You need to wear my line jacket across the yard. Clearly, you need to be Michelle to my Obama right now. And I don't understand why you're not getting that. But I did start to see subtle changes within myself. I started to leave that preach persona behind, because that's what all the homies call me, preach. And I really embraced Thor the Four. And that's really who I started to see myself slowly but surely become.
It's so interesting because the Omega ritual, the Omegas are referenced heavily as the son of Omega.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
so it's very interesting that before you join an organization and you are a Christian, you are the son of God. But then when you cross over into Omega, as you explained, you truly transform into the
You
son
truly
of
do.
Omega.
You truly do. And I think the symbolism is always there. I always tell people a probate is nothing more than a baptism. I mean, even probate, if we're talking about probate court, we're talking about death, right? So you have died to something, and I can remember the beginning of our process literally being told that in a graveyard, you have died to your former self, right? You died. You are no longer this person, that person. You're a number. You're number one. Whatever the case may be. And so, here we are at campus, and like you may know him, but now he is, and we're reintroducing you to the world as somebody. This is truly an outward expression of an inward decision. It is a baptism, right? A neophyte. What are you as a neophyte? You are an initiate into a new belief system or religion. That is a neophyte. So I think there's a lot of things that we go through and we matriculate through that we don't question, right? And I think that everybody's like, I didn't let Greek life change me. It's impossible. It was designed to. I thought myself that way. Like, well, I'm this coal, right? This coal that's burning one particular way, but a coal that is lumped into a much larger fire is going to eventually burn that way. That's just the way that it goes. I'm sorry, you're not greater than the sun, and I kept hearing that, like, you're so different than the bruhs. And I think over time I started to internalize, well, what does that really mean? Because I'm thinking I'm embodying the principles of said organization, but I think it's not so much the true quote unquote principles, but it's just the culture. I didn't necessarily embody the culture until I did. Like I said, you become. I mean, you are a neophyte. You are a neophyte, and that is your expression. But I will say to those who potentially are aspiring, and I get it, because you feel like you are coming into something bigger and better than yourself. But I need people to be encouraged and understand that while it may be bigger than you, it is not better than you. These organizations are nothing without you. It truly is the sum of its parts. So all your brilliance, all your gifts, all your talents, you truly are surrendering them to said organization. And so the greatness, quote unquote, that Omega is because of you. So I don't need you all to feel like you have to be a part of said thing to be great. You already belong to a royal priesthood, and so I really would encourage you to embrace that position and identity.
That is so good. This thing's going so good. I don't even know where we are. Okay. So you're talking about how, you crossed over and basically, you started to really conform to the
Yeah,
organization
yeah.
and you start to backslide without
Hmm.
even noticing that you backslide.
Hmm.
How was it, when as you continue in college, as you graduate, how
Hmm.
was that
I
for you?
think, as I continue college, so that kind of brings in the other portion that, kind of grieves me at this point in my life. But, people that I mentored, and like I said, eventually my brother, I pledged him as well. And so he came into to college, I think, with different aspirations. But he kind of fell under the influence of a teacher that we both had in high school, who was an alpha. He led an organization in our high school called Men of Change. And so I think that, in its formation, the intentions were good, but not all intentions or well meaning things end up being good. And so with that, he kind of had that fraternal mindset, came in probably with different aspirations than what I had done. But, through many a conversation, sit down, etc., I think that influence ultimately happened. And So he decided to come into the organization as well. I want to say at that point in time, I had already graduated because that line was spring 16 and I was 14. That grieved me. It definitely did. But at that particular time, I am amped up. I mean, you know what I'm saying? This is my brother, and he came in as the same number that I am. You know, he was a 4. You know, so I'm like, you're my blood brother, my chapter brother, my number. Like, bro, we about to run the frat for real. Took him on his first road trip and things of that nature, and then really tried to get him immersed. And then, you know, somebody else that was my mentee and what it did. But now I look at, you know, some of the fruits of their lives and how I ultimately had, you know, I played a part in that, you know, and it's something that I wish that I never would have even introduced them to. Coming off of it, as I kind of was getting ready to graduate and things of that nature, like I said, I actually came back and graduated at Clemson. I spent a semester at Georgia State because I only had one class left. So there was really no point in paying Clemson tuition for one course. So I finished that course at Georgia State back in home in Atlanta, and then came back and graduated. And I think, like a lot of people, well, I can't speak for everybody, but the bros are always the bros. You know, they're always around campus. They're always around the young bros. I don't care if you're 70, 80s, 90s. And I loved that for a time. I did. I really loved that for a time. But I also recognized that there is so much of your life that becomes consumed by the organization that you can't call it an idol. You know, it's birthdays, it's anniversaries, it's your wedding, it's your funeral, it's you do something at work, root to the bros. Like, that's amazing, dog. I can't believe you did that. Like, you know, it's a thing. And it becomes a part of your essence. It becomes a part of everything that you do. Omega is considered in all. So I think coming out of school, I probably would have matured into, you know, different things much faster, into relationship or marriage and all these other kind of things. But you're just so immersed with the work of Omega and coming back and pledging boys and making sure that your chapter is good and all these kind of things. Yeah, and I mean, it definitely had its stressors at that point in time. I was in a long-term relationship, and so it had there was a lot of detriment there. You know what I'm saying, and understandably so. And, you know, I think being removed from it now, I didn't really realize the impact that it had. And so I think that with that, I had my cat season where I'm like, you know, I'm gonna I'm gonna be, you know, more relational. I'm gonna try to really, you know, be a grown up and work and do my corporate thing. But when that relationship ultimately dissolved at the beginning of 2020, that's when I'm like, okay, I'm gonna commit myself to counseling, therapy, but also faith and fraternity. And that's when this whole kind of denunciation period started. Yeah, but 7 years thoroughly immersed, you know what I'm saying, for sure. Active in the graduate chapter, doing, you know, youth mentoring. And I think in all those ways, beautiful, culturally, spiritually, damaging, for sure.
How was it being in a grad chapter? I didn't know you had went on to grad chapter. How was that? You
Yeah.
know,
Honestly, it's funny. Like when I got to the grad chapter, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, this is what fraternity is supposed to be. You know, because in my mind, like I said, in me having what I felt like were pure motives in joining, that's where a lot of the work happens. You know, I feel like unfortunately, undergraduate is the financial engine to the, you know, fraternities and sororities. That's where you get your membership. That's where you're getting all your influxes of cash. But they're not really doing the work. That's why they have mandated programs. These are mandatory. And I feel like if they were not mandatory, you know, largely they would not get done. Because it's time to do the parties, it's time to come up with pretty nasty or whatever. Everybody's showing up, they're ready to work. It's time to go and serve the community. You're late, you're not here, you overslept, you know. So I think when I got to the graduate chapter, being with what I felt like were more mature men, I think I honestly enjoyed that experience better because I felt like we were actually doing the work of Omega. Truly, you know, it felt like brotherhood. It felt like men that are they're professionals too, right? So I mean, you got lawyers, doctors, engineers, business owners, restaurant owners, and so the connections were amazing. The mentorship I think was amazing. Again, on a worldly level. And after that, like I said, relationship dissolved. And this is like the kickstart to the pandemic as well. So I'm like, okay, well, obviously it's time to be out. Duh. Like it's, you know, like what's good with the cues? Like let's figure this thing back out. Let's re-immerse. But I also said that I really wanted to reinvest in faith because I saw myself in that fade away period. I saw myself in that prodigal son walk away from home phase of my life. And so I'm like, let's come home. And when you decide to come home, there's house rules. And so I feel like the Lord just kind of began doing a work. subtly, but surely. And I think the more that, and there were always things. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, I was choir boy, so there were always things that I could not appreciate fraternally. But I'm thinking that these are the outward fringes. I can't appreciate, we in the clubs and this beat that. You know how it goes, And so I'm like, well, that's just accused being accused, but I'm not going to necessarily put that on the brand of the organization. And so, I'm like, well, let me get back into, my writ. Let me get back into my knowledge because, like I said, I prided myself on being a very knowledgeable brother. I can't be out here wrecking. I'm a little guy. So in order to avoid the conflict, I got to know, I got to be knowledgeable. And so that's what I prided myself on. But it's been a little bit. I'm a little rusty. So let me get back into these books. Let me get back into, talking writ, talking, whatever it is. And as I began to do so, and as I began to deepen my faith as well, I really started to, I guess, kind of feel that little contradiction. And I wouldn't even necessarily say at the time it was the nudge of the spirit or anything like that. I think it was really just me beginning to see the contrast and the contradiction and the fruits of said organization. And so as that kind of began, I want to say that was probably like April or May of 20. And God in his wisdom had a friend call me in June of 20. And mind you, my birthday is in July, so I'm already planning I mean, this is my first birthday single in a lot of years. So I'm like, you know what? Yeah, it's gonna be that. It's gonna be all of that. Here it is, June. I get a phone call, kind of a frantic phone call, like, hey, you at your apartment? Yeah, I'm cleaning up, what's going on? I need to come by, like now. Okay. Yeah, I'm here. You know what I'm saying? Let me sure. And so comes by, we catch up. Conversation is very, very normal. And at the culmination of this conversation, she hits me with, well, I just wanted to let you know I denounced Delta. That made no sense to me. I'm like, in my mind, this is Auntie on campus. You know what I'm saying? She's the one with the good wigs and the good sides. That's Auntie. So I can't even begin to fathom why you would leave the organization, much less why you're telling me, because at this point she communicates that she hadn't told Profight, she hadn't told her LSs. I am the first person she's communicating this with. And so then I proceed to be like, well, why? And she tells me that it is the Holy Spirit led her to believe that it was confirmation of something that I already knew. And that stuck with me. It kind of struck me. Wasn't happy about it, but it struck me. And that, I guess the Lord had just kind of whispered a word to her in the shower. And so that's when she immediately got up and came to have a conversation with me. So that's pretty much when I put her out. Like, yeah, you gotta go. Like, yeah, thank you, but nah, like that's not what I'm trying to hear right now. Actually, I'm gonna be very out next month, so we'll talk another time. But thank you for ruining my day. And so, it was all in love. It really was. And I'm so grateful for her boldness and her obedience to come and have that conversation with me. But largely, I rejected it, and I think that my denunciation path, journey, and story is just a little different in the sense that I never really felt convicted. That wasn't my thing. There was no dream or vision or anything of that nature. Or really, I heard the audible voice of God and he told me. It just wasn't like that for me. As a matter of fact, I remember kind of being angry with God. Like, why would you give this person a quote unquote word when I'm accessible? I'm available. You could talk to me, And so again, I just kind of think I rejected that word for a time. And so from that particular conversation, it took 11 months before I ultimately made the decision to leave. So that conversation happened. And following that conversation, I just went back to being the bros, really. And I had an amazing birthday party. I don't know. I feel like things just started to kind of happen that caused me to take pause. Right. And I remember one of those things, again, just kind of being around the bros. There was a loss, I'd say, of enthusiasm. Like I kind of got tired of what I felt like was just the childish games, the womanizing and things of that nature. I'm like, at some point we got to grow up, bros. You know what I'm saying? Like there's got to be something more to this. I don't care about what have you read a book recently? Have you made an investment? Have you learned a skill? Anything? Let's talk about anything else but war stories, and riddles and things. Like let's have some real authentic conversations. And so moving on from there, I remember when one of my neos, this was months later. Like I said, that initial conversation was in June, and then in I want to say October, November. It was fall-ish. It was definitely getting cold in Georgia. He was getting ready to leave town. He got a new job. And so they were having like a little going away thing. But by that point, I kind of began to distance myself. from the fraternity a little bit, and I literally felt the urge to go, like something was pressed upon me that you should go. Okay, so I turn the car around and I go. And in the midst of being there on this rooftop of this apartment complex in Atlanta, there was bros from my chapter, bros from UGA chapter, and we're just all having a good time, talking, chopping it up. I'm a little removed. I'm sitting by this fire pit, and so two of one of my L not my yeah one of my LBs, and then UGA bro pull up, and they're talking to these young ladies that are sitting around the fire pit doing what they're doing, politicking. I'm like, here we go. I'm largely ignoring it. I'm just on my phone, and the young lady asked a question. She's like, all y'all are the bros? And so we're like, yeah, yeah. And she's like, okay, well, how do y'all feel like the frat conflicts with y'all's faith? So I pucker up, you know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't expect to come here for this, but okay, clearly this is a lesson that I need, you know what I'm saying? This is quite the coincidence. So I perk up, and it was funny. It wasn't even so much what the young lady said in her conversation. It was the bros that convicted me because of how they had to so strongly defend the frat against the faith. And I feel like if these two things are in unison, if there's no contradiction, then there should not be this much tension in this conversation. I think the other thing that you recognize is they know so much more about the fraternity than they do the faith, even while claiming said faith. I know that you could better tell me about your four founders than you could the 33 years of Messiah's life or his ministry. You can name the founders, can't name four disciples. I promise you. And so it's like, your ritual better than your scripture. I can hear it in this conversation. And so that was kind of startling to me. Not only that, but just the disrespect and tonality that I could hear when this young lady was very composed. You could tell she had a heart for them as men and wanting them to come into the fullness of faith. And I didn't reject that at all, but I was just a student to this conversation. I didn't participate much. But at the culmination of that conversation, after they was just berating her, she looked at me. She's like, you're the only one that showed me kindness. I want to give you a phone number. If you don't want to hear from me, I understand. But I have a phone number of somebody else from your organization that denounced, and perhaps you'd be willing to have a conversation. Shout outs to her. That's Lorena. I know she's big with Out From Among Them. So shout outs to Lorena for being bold and having that conversation. And it really edified me. It really did. After that, I'm like, I'm not going to call this man. I don't want to leave. I'm conflicted, but I don't want to go. So I'll take the number, thank you. But and largely it's set in my wallet for quite some time, for a few more months. But eventually, like I said, as I'm seeking, as I'm coming to certain things, and I'm arguing with God, because at that point I am arguing with God. So it wasn't even again so much me having. I didn't see a video on a timeline that convicted me. It wasn't certain. I've seen them all. I've heard all the arguments, and I like to think of myself as an academic. So now I'm just having these academic conversations with God. Like, well, what's the issue? And I remember one time feeling in my spirit like, well, they require the same things of you that I require of you. They require your time, your absolute devotion. They require, you sing songs, you sing hymns, you give praises. Really, it's not even chapter dues. You pay a tithe. You sow into this. And you have made more disciples for Omega than you have made for me. You've made more brothers than disciples. So I think all of these things kind of came to the forefront. And I really want to make this point because I know people in the community right now are like, why do y'all harp so much on denouncing? Fair question. It's a question that I had. And I think the one thing that we have to consider, and don't get me wrong, we speak to the denouncing of all the sin that you're involved in, all the wickedness that you're in. So I would say denounce drunkenness, debauchery, fornication, adultery, all these things. So I don't want you to think that it is just that, but this is our experience. I can't speak to homosexuality. I can't speak to what I can speak to this, and I think that sometimes the Lord allows you to go through certain things so that you can be a witness, right? The best person to speak to a gang member is a former gang member. I can't listen to you outside of this. The best person is for a stripper is a reformed stripper. These are the people that need to have the conversation because I'm not ignorant to what you went through. I'm not ignorant to your rituals. I'm not ignorant to your thought processes, your experiences. I've lived them. But I think the one thing that is unique about this in particular is that this is a sin that you are oath bound to. I can, God forbid, right? But I can go to bed drunk and wake up sober. You're going to go to bed in that covenant and you're going to wake up in it, right? It is something that you are consistently bound to. Active or inactive, you are under that. You don't have to be necessarily active because the minute that you recited that oath, and came into agreement with said thing, you are in partnership with it. You can be separated from somebody in a marriage. That doesn't make a divorce. I haven't talked to you in 20 years. I haven't seen you. If I go down to the courtroom and I check these records, that marriage is very much so active. And so I think that that's something that I really want to impress upon the people. Active, inactive, out, cat, doesn't necessarily matter. You're oath bound to said thing. And that was something that shocked me. Like I said, you think you pledge, you're just gonna come out, you're gonna wear your shirt, you're gonna do your step shows. I think the ritual was really the thing that did shock me. I mean, even matriculating through that entire process, I never necessarily knew that it was gonna culminate in this ritual. And here I am in this dark room, surrounded by brothers that are cloaked with these candles lit. You know, this is happening. And here I am blindfolded on my knees reciting said thing. And I'll be honest, I cannot really remember what my thoughts were at that point in time. But the thing that I want to impress upon people, I think that, you know, we give a lot of passes to things in the Black community simply because they are Black. I think that that is the root idol of most things. And stuff like BGLOs is an offshoot of said thing. And because of our history and the traumas, we will give passes to people. Even if Ray Ray did all the things that Ray Ray did, we want to free Ray Ray, right? Because there's a police officer that arrested him. And so we'd rather condemn the police officer than the actions of Ray Ray because Ray Ray's Black. And so I think that oftentimes it's the same thing that happens in our community. So if we remove the esteem and the prestige and the honor and reverence that is given to said organizations, and I had to say this to myself in my denunciation process. If I called if my son called me, if anybody called me and they said, you know, hey, can't really talk about it, but you know, I'm about to embark on a journey to join something. It's very private, it's very secret. I'm showing up every day, I'm learning information, I'm repeating, I'm reciting, I'm regurgitating, I'm being deprived, I'm being mentally, you know, humiliated, I'm being physically humiliated, all these things. And at the end of said thing, like I said, I'm brought into a dark room with candles lit, with a shield before me at an altar. I got down on all my knees, I'm blindfolded, and I recited said oath. Anybody in their right mind is going to say, son, you just joined a cult. Remove all that, like, again, all the elitism, all the prestige, all the honor. And if you see it for what it is, I think you can mentally process that this is crazy. There's a certain level of crazy to it. So I just want people to be, again, just cognizant of that. And I hope the scales begin to fall from people's eyes and they can just see these things. So, anyways, after that rooftop experience and that conversation, I did end up a couple months later calling that young brother. Ended up being, and he has a powerful testimony, Shaheed Johnson. Yeah, so I had a wonderful conversation with Shaheed and Brother P. So I spoke to both of them that night, and what I thought was going to be a long conversation was very, very brief. Not for reasons that were negative. It was just like, well, let's talk these scriptures, and we talked them. No Bible needed to be open. No, I know those scriptures. Let's talk. Well, have you talked about this Hebraically? Oh yeah. Oh, I'm deep into the Hebrew. Like that's a large part of my faith journey. I study with Messianic Jews. Those are my fellow congregants. I've been a part of that community since 2011. So yeah, like I know all these things. And then eventually the conversation was just like, well, you know what? We're gonna cut this short. Call me when you're out. I said, nah, it's not gonna happen like that. Like, nah, bro. You already know it. The whole guideline, the things that we were gonna have to walk through, like you already know them. So it's not even, bro, it's a matter of time. Like I said, take my number, call me when you come out. Lo and behold, that's exactly how that ended up playing out. But that wasn't the end of it though. I was very abrasive in that conversation. Like, nah, that's not me. I'm gonna be the one to reform the fraternity. Obviously, you know, I'm gonna be the one to. I think when people come against a thing, obviously you want to defend it because you love it. You're bound to it. You are married to it, literally. So I think that whether it's abusive or kind to you, you want to defend it. And so that's all that I was trying to do at that time. You know, some more time goes by. I'm having more conversations. The Lord, He's winning, obviously. And the weird thing I think that broke the straw that broke the camel's back was actually a conversation that I had with a friend that was a Delta. I was going up to Greenville, South Carolina, just for a day, just to kind of just kick it in Greenville with some friends, and I had a conversation with, excuse me, a Delta on the drive up. By some means, she asked about the frat, or she asked about whatever. I'm like, you know, I think I'm gonna say this out loud to you. I haven't really said it before, but I feel like I'm about to be part of that YouTube community. I think I'm going to join the weirdos. I don't know. I think that's something I see happening for myself potentially. I'm not quite there yet, but it's something that, and I just wanted to say that out loud so that if it ever does happen, we had this conversation. And she's like, wow, like I've never really thought about these things. But I said, nah, like I've been in my writ. I've been in my writ lately, and it's some wild stuff in there. She's like, I haven't cracked these things open since 2013. Let me go back and see what my things say. And she's like, I'm gonna call you back. And so, I continue to drive, and maybe 30 or so minutes later I get a call, and she's just like perplexed. She's like, yo, I just read something, and it said something about, you're about to take upon yourself vows and obligations from which you will never be freed. These things will follow you until the final judgment. And I'm like, to do community service, to serve your community, to be scholarly, like that, we have to, and that just really struck something in my spirit. It wasn't even necessarily from my own ritual. I mean, there's a lot of questionable things in there too, but that really struck me and sat with me and really caused me to take pause. And so I get to Greenville, and ironically, I think I kicked it with another Delta that day. Ended up getting late, and I'm like, let me just get a hotel, and I'm just gonna crash for the night. But I woke up with that heaviness, just that heaviness, and so I was like, no more, no more, no more, Lord. That's it for me. I'm done. And so May 2nd, 2021, in that hotel room, I relinquished that thing. It's funny, again, it wasn't so much a matter of conviction. Because I feel like throughout that 11-month period, even though I was seeing things, and so I say that to those people that are kind of on the fence, and that you're just like, this is not my personal conviction. I need you to understand that your personal conviction has no bearing on God's ultimate truths. There are a lot of people within the body of Messiah that are not convicted about a lot of different things, various things, drunkenness, sexual immorality, homosexuality, and I think sometimes what we do is we push them into just mainstream Christianity. And unfortunately, there's a lot of things even within the body of Messiah in the Christian church that are blended. There's a lot of things from the world in there. So I don't really look to push people towards more of an organized system. I'm pointing you to the person of Messiah, the person of Christ. And in being in relationship with him, it is virtually impossible. If his spirit dwells with you, it is impossible for you not to see the stark contradictions that exist in said organization. And I need you to understand, if there's any possibility at all that you could be eternally separated from him, I'd hate to think that your organization has its hooks in you that deep that you can't even take the second thought to see if something is wrong, to see if there is just something that is spiritually contradictory to this whole thing. And the urgency, I really want to stress urgency. All you have is today. It's vanity to say anything else. You don't have tomorrow. You don't have next week. Your eyes may not open tomorrow. And there's plenty of people that wish they had more time. In my ministry, I said to my young people and my young adults all the time, are you a young man or an old man? And they're like, oh, we're young. I said, it's vanity for you to say that because you have no idea. I'm sure a lot of people think, oh, I'm 20, but if you die at 22, you're an old man. If you're 30 and you live to be 80, then you might be a young man, but you truly do not know. All you have is today. So I really want you to pause and consider the weight of said decision, because in my mind, and I think you've said it before too, Lala, it is salvific. It really is. Your eternal security may be on the line. God does require obedience. He is holy, 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 kadosh, kadosh, kadosh. And so that's something that you guys have to really begin to wrestle with. And that's what I wrestled with. And so it wasn't so much, again, a matter of being convicted. I was convinced. I was convinced. I did enough academic knowledge to be able to see in black and white that this thing is contradictory to the God that I serve. I truly cannot serve two masters. So I think that it's okay to be an academic. It's okay to not necessarily feel convicted. I don't think God wanted me to feel convicted. I think despite a feeling, he wanted me to obey. And so that is my encouragement to a lot of you. A lot of you won't have dreams. I'm sorry. A lot of you won't have visions. He's not going to crack the clouds necessarily to come have a conversation with you. He didn't do that when he wanted you to come out of fornication. He didn't do that when he wanted you to come out of drunkenness and debauchery. He's not going to do that now. Not saying that he can't, but the likelihood, probably not. So I pray that you would just be obedient enough, discipled enough to see the stark contradiction, to come out of said lifestyle, to dedicate your life to the person of Messiah. That is my hope for you. Sorry, that was a rant. I told you I was going to do it.
That's good. No, that's good. That's good. How was it when you made that decision 2021 in the hotel room,
Mhm.
renounced, came out of agreement with the organization?
Yeah.
How was life moving forward? Because you were connected to a lot of Omegas,
For
family,
sure.
all of that. So how was that part? Because I think that is what the piece that keeps people bound.
It is. Everything is tied to people. It's tied to people. It's tied to relationships. When I have conversations with the vast majority of people that are on the fence or those that even are not on the fence, it never usually has anything to do with the organization itself. It has everything to do with, I don't want to lose these people, this community that I've built. And the enemy knows that, and that's what we talked about in terms of deception, right? Like it's the people around you that will keep you bound, right? And we lean on everything in the book to try to give ourselves excuses. My mom, my brother, my pastor. How could my pastor be wrong? And I was like, listen, Aaron was the first high priest for Bnei Israel, right? He was the first high priest for the children of Israel, Kohen Gadol. And even with that, he brought golden calf worship to his people. He communicated the ordinances, the oracles, the commandments of God. He was a mouthpiece for the Most High. And even with that, he still brought golden calf worship. And we can look at that two ways, and this might be a deeper Hebraic thought, but let's take away just the obvious idolatry of the golden calf that so many of us talk about in conversation. And let's look at it from a different perspective, because it's argued that it wasn't even so much the golden calf symbolizing something external from God, but they wanted a visual representation, a physical representation of the God of Israel. And so they wanted to utilize that in the embodiment of this golden calf, right? Not that it was separate, not that it was something else that brought them out, but we need something physical. We need an image of the invisible God to carry with us. So sometimes it's argued not even that it was idolatrous just in that sense, but that it was a forbidden form of worship, right? It was a forbidden expression. So what if you, okay, well, I don't feel like my organization is idolatrous. Well, maybe it is just a forbidden expression, something that God does not need attached, Christian principle or not. Like I said, just because you want to put Christ on something doesn't mean he's in something, and so he will reject it. So let's say you wanted to put the personhood of God on this golden calf. You can try to put him on it. He's not in it. It's rejected, right? You're trying to make this image, this idolatrous thing. You're trying to attach it. You're trying to, not make it as severe, desensitize, whatever you want to call it. And I think that's a lot of what we try to do. We try to desensitize the idolatry that is glaring. And so that's where I really want us to begin to be careful. But anyways, the time after was really difficult. I had to grieve it like you would any other relationship, because I recognize that a lot of my relationships are probably about to fall apart. And a lot of the things that I foresaw will not happen. These men that I saw at a wedding, or these men that I saw celebrating me in this new business venture or this corporate accomplishment, may not happen. These trips that I used to get invited on and things of that nature, these parties, what's homecoming going to look like? Can I go back to my campus? You know what I'm saying? That I graduated from and even feel non-alienated? Is that possible? So all these things go through your mind. And like I said, I brought my brother through. What's my mom gonna think? All these things. And to my surprise, my mother was hugely disappointed. And like I said, this is not something that she even speaks on a lot, but the depth of her disappointment was startling to me. It truly wasn't. I mean, so she's on my heart, she's in my prayers, still doesn't see it, but God isn't finished. And the aftermath wasn't what I would have wanted, for sure. I really didn't get the opportunity to communicate my own story to my chapter. There was a situation where my former line brother, my former ace, had come down to the city, and I had already been removed from the organization for quite some time, the better part of a year. But I think I was isolated. I had just moved to Tampa, and so I wasn't surrounded by my normal community, so it wasn't an everyday thing anymore. So I didn't necessarily feel the need to say much, and I wanted to process it on my own without all the outside noise, outside influence, because something can stir something in you that might bring you back. I know many people that have come out and then went right back into the organization. So while I was grieving it, I wanted to consecrate that time to truly grieve it, get it out, so that when I did have these conversations, it wasn't something that I could, just be easily drugged back into. Anyways, he came down to Tampa. It was a random trip. And I knew that I was going to communicate this information to my chapter in January. This would have been January of 22. Knew I was going to have this conversation, but this is December. So this is the month before. And he's here. He's in my face. We're about to have dinner. So I'm like, well, how would I feel if this person was sitting in front of me and could have had this opportunity to tell me and then waited, like, man, I was just with you last month. Why didn't you just tell me? So I'm like, I'm going to do the respect. Well, I feel like it's a respectful thing and communicate this truth. I did. And, it was seemingly a good conversation. There was seemingly understanding, like, well, hey, man, you still my dog. Da, da, da. I'm like, please keep that within your breast until I'm able to have this conversation, with the chapter and communicate that out to, the rest of our LBs, profiles that I love, etc. I don't think any quicker than that man probably got in the car. He had already communicated that out. And so I tried to honor what I said I was going to do. And I didn't know any of this. I come into town, I come back to Atlanta in January, and I'm like, time to have these tough conversations. So I call up my dudes, like, hey, man, I'm gonna come by your place and I want to talk to you. And so I get there, even with all the nerves and whatever, I'm like trying to have this conversation. And in the midst of it, it's like, hey, you know what? We already know, man. We already know, everybody. We had a Zoom call about it or whatever the case may be. And so largely the narrative got away from me. I don't know exactly what was communicated. Even to this day, he kind of robbed me of that narrative. So I feel like there probably were opportunities to maintain relationships in some sense. I don't know exactly what was said, but I know that that narrative was kind of taken from me, and I didn't necessarily pursue it after the fact. I was removed from everything, from all the group chats and the emails, profiles that I loved, that I thought were at least going to offer an extended conversation. Nothing. So a lot of those didn't happen. Maybe 4 or 5 bros that I was able to communicate to or that reached out. But people that I was roommates with, people that I, love, profiles that mentor me. It was my favorite mentor that actually removed me from the group chat. No, not so much as a conversation. Know what happened? Can we talk about it? It was just kind of over and done. And again, I didn't pursue it because I'm like, Lord, if you want me to be again consecrated, if this is the way in which it was supposed to unfold, because I don't know. Maybe had I communicated this story, maybe I would have been drawn back. I can't necessarily say. Ultimately, I didn't pursue those conversations, had many thoughts like, well, let me clean this up. Let me explain myself. I don't explain myself to man. You know what I'm saying? I'm submitted only to the Lord. And so I didn't do that. What fellowship can light have with darkness? And I don't see the men as darkness. So if they ever get wind of this, like, I love those bros, still do, you know what I'm saying? But not in that way. And if Omega was the depth of said relationship, so be it, ultimately. But again, it took some time. It took a while to normalize, but God is good. And I think in alignment with what everybody else says, God has bigger, He has better, He has community for you. Anything that the organization can do, God is more than capable, more than capable. And I think that life now is truly better than I probably could have hoped or imagined. I don't think I ever would have come into ministry. I don't think I ever would have met, my spouse and things. And there are certain things that I know for sure would not have happened had I not moved in obedience.
Brother, that was so good.
Amen.
I know that was challenging though to deal with though, the loss of the friend, the friends, friendships, connections, all of that,
For sure.
in a way that you didn't see it happening.
Mm-hmm.
But
It
like
was.
you said, the Lord could have been working behind the scenes and knowing that if you had that conversation, you could have been swayed. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think vice versa too, and that was something that that I was kind of made hip to after the fact. I got a phone call because of course the communications are happening amongst chapter brothers, and some of that communication is getting back to me. And I knew for sure that there were some of my neos specifically did not want to talk to me because of the fact that they feel like they could have been swayed. But I think that's the thing. Like, people love the sin that they're in. Like, let's make no mistake about it. There are things that a lot of people know are wrong or damaging or harming to themselves, but people love the sin they're in. And so I think that that was part of mine. I could have easily called my friend back that came to my apartment and be like, explain more, give me more, let's talk, let's really get into this. I could have called Shahid the number the night I got his number. People love to send their in. People love their chains. They really do. And so, I get it. I get it. But I hope that God really begins to impress upon their hearts. I hope I do get those phone calls and that we could talk about it. I really do. But in the meantime, I understand.
Thank you for sharing. I'm so glad I asked that question because there is a lot of people, like I said, that are bound because of what can happen,
Yeah.
and then they probably hear your story and like, no, see, that's why I ain't trying to come out because I ain't
Yeah.
trying to,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, it's greater on this side than it is
Mhm.
on the side with Omega. Like the
Yeah.
side with the Lord is always worth it.
Yeah, it is. It is worth it, and I don't know where we get lost. Like I said, I think it's because a lot of people are churchy, and a lot of people are not necessarily rooted in Christ, and so these are relationships that they can tangibly see. And so maybe like the children of Israel, because I don't see, I need a representation of something here that I can gravitate to and show affections to. Except I need something that I can touch and feel, and I can do that organizationally. And sometimes I'm like, God, do you even hear me? Are you listening to me? But I know I have community here. I know I did something and got a tangible result. And so ultimately there's a doubt there that I think also keeps people rooted, where you don't really trust that God can do said thing. You really believe that you can get it from this. And you were so, I think that that is the idolatry. Is like, why would you not leave it? I mean, if I could give it to you by this means, would you be willing to leave? And I think the answer for a lot of people would still be no, because you're attached to something that, again, you think is bigger and better than you. And that's the deception of the enemy right there. But I think the other part of that conversation, just to go on another tangent, is the fact that we largely, especially in the Black church, aren't really taught always how dangerous certain things are, right? I think there's things that get taught, but we don't always get trained up. And so I think a lot of things in our mind are just fictional or stories. They sound good, they feel good, but they haven't really materialized in their lives, right? And so I think when you're used to all the blending and the mixing, I'm used to, Santa Claus in the church. Oh, well, Santa Claus isn't real. Yeah, but I'm desensitized to those things already. And I think sometimes we got to be careful about replicas and wanting to replicate things. It might be controversial, but I'm not a trunk or treat person. You know what I'm saying? I'm just not. It's like, let's not, we don't always have to imitate something of the world and give it to our children, give it to our people. We need to tell them that it's dangerous. And we also need to tell them that it's real, right? I think we have it in our minds like, well, Minerva's not real. Yeah, she is. She is. Maybe not in the godly, authoritative sense, that supreme sense that you're thinking, but there is a demon, there's a spiritual entity that is operating behind Minerva. There is a spiritual entity operating behind these organizations. You don't get hundreds of thousands of people to rally around something that isn't real. You don't get people to brand symbols into their skin for something that is not real. It is that deep. And I think that that's the lie that we continue to tell ourselves. It's like, if he says stay away from the diviners and witches and wizards and warlocks and things of that nature, it's not because if they weren't real, interact with them all day long. It's because they are real. And so I think that we need to start saying these things to our children before they go off to college and things are like, hey, 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 like there is a spiritual realm and we need to talk more about it. It's got to be more than, and I remember having that conversation with people. When I think back to Bible stories, a lot of it's cartoons in my head, even now. It's little, scrapbooks and that. It took a long time for me to really grow in Christ before these are real individuals with real stories that went through real things. And I think that that is the thing that is the most dangerous for us is that we don't really see the fullness of it as real, and so these dangers, when they go off and it's like, oh, it's kind of idolatrous, they are just used to what's familiar. So as long as you say Christian, come on. You know what I'm saying? In the same way, it's like da 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 da. Well, that's kind of, oh, but they're Black. Oh, well then of course we'll support their business. It's just they just hear that little thing that kind of gives them community, that gives them familiarity, and they're easily deceived. So we got to really begin to train ourselves up in the Word, and really begin to make these things real, so that people begin, even believers, begin to see things through spiritual eyes and not so much their carnal eyes.
So we at the end of your testimony, you have
Yeah,
anything else you want to tell the people?
probably. We're probably gonna have to start a series. You know what I'm saying? Like we're gonna have to do like a little monthly little thing.
I feel like that's you better prophesy.
You
That's what the Lord
know,
is calling you to.
I'm not mad at it, but I want people to know, like, again, if you're on the fence, that's okay. A lot of us were, but I want you to be bold. I want you to be courageous, especially men. There's not a lot of men that are speaking against these things that are coming out of these powers and principalities, but you can do it. You have support. You have a community. You can reach out to me directly. Lala, there's a lot of research. I had to feel the same way. I'm like, I don't know what my community is going to be. There's a community on this side. You know what I'm saying? There are brothers and sisters that have gone through similar experiences, that are willing to engage with you, help you walk through, rituals and all that kind of stuff with you. And we can get into those things. So I would do it. And I would say be obedient, even with faith, something as simple as faith. Faith came by hearing, right? By hearing. So it's not always, like I said, going to be some deep rooted thing. Somebody dropped this, God, the whole, and that happens for some people. It may not happen for you. It came by hearing. So can you hear something and be obedient? I really would pray that you can walk out the discipleship journey and that sanctification journey without constantly needing confirmations from God. He's written his word already. There is no excuse. Time is short, so I really pray that you would take this as a warning, truly as a warning, and consecrate yourself while there's still time.
That's so good. And for those that are watching, I actually did a video where I went through pieces of the Omega ritual and compared it to scripture. Okay. So for those that are like, I don't know where my writ at, I ain't even get my writ. Some people said they ain't even get their writ, they crossed in the org. But for those that, that don't have it, I did a video, and I'll put the link actually to all the initiation rituals are on this website that I found.
And the last thing I will say, again, is that freedom don't always feel free. God gave me this picture on a cruise ship, and I'm out on the balcony and I'm looking at everything, and it's wonderful, it's beautiful. And he's like, the reason that you get to enjoy this is because of this boundary in front of you. It's because of this guardrail in front of you. Now you might think freedom is this guardrail removed, but you're in more danger actually. You wouldn't really be able to enjoy it because you're going to be paranoid about falling. So don't always look at the rules and the boundaries as something dangerous. It's probably that very boundary that is going to give you the opportunity to enjoy the fullness of the beauty of what God's laid before you. So that would be my last statement. I concede.
That's so good. That's so good. Listen, brother, thank you so much. This thing, if it ain't bless nobody, it bless me. Okay.
Absolutely.
But I know
Amen.
it's going to bless many. I can already see that it's going to bless many, many people. This testimony is going to yield so much fruit. And so thank you for your obedience to the Lord by sharing your story.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Thank you. Sorry for the ramble, guys.
No, good. You weren't rambling saying nothing. You rambling good revelations. It was good.
Amen.
Yeah. Do you want to leave your Instagram?
Yes, sure. My Instagram is at the kosher kid. TheKosherKidd. The kosher kid. So feel free to follow me. Feel free to engage, have conversations. You can troll. I will not respond. But if you want to engage in healthy dialogue all day long, let's do it.
That's right. We ignore the trollers. All right. We pray for y'all. We ignore y'all. And so before we go, do you mind closing us out in prayer if that's okay?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Dear Heavenly Father, Yah, we come humbly before your throne of grace and mercy. Just so grateful for the day. So grateful for this opportunity to commune and fellowship with one another, Lord. I pray that the word that has gone forth will not return void, and that somebody will be blessed by this testimony. Somebody be blessed by this conversation, that it would be edifying, Lord, that it would plant seeds in somebody and water seeds in another. I pray that you would give people courage, strength, that you would deepen your relationship with them, that your Ruach HaKodesh, that your Holy Spirit would really begin to move in them and take root, Lord, and that they would see that there is brothers and sisters and community outside of these organizations, and that they would let these things of the world go so they can embrace the things for your eternal kingdom. So continue to just embolden us in these last days. Give us guidance, give us wisdom, go before us and order our steps in your word. And we just pray and ask all of that, Lord, B'Shem Yeshua, in the name of him who is the Christ. We pray and ask it all. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much again, Brother Thor. Such a
Absolutely.
powerful testimony. And thank y'all so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Bye. This was so good.
Yeah. Okay.